don't throw tomatoes and chase me out. There is, in the secular history, the joke is that history begins with Julius Caesar. Exactly. Because the ancient sources are almost automatically rejected unless they dig them out of the dirt. Particularly anything that supports the biblical narrative is considered myth and not even examined at all. So, and we have many documents, many ancient documents, I will cover some of them, that go right along with the Bible. And the attitude is, those nefarious Christians have sneaked in and changed stuff to conform with the Bible. However, there is one, and this is a picture of one. This is the Sumerian King's List. And I can guarantee you, no sneaky Christians have changed it because it was found in like the 1800s. Dug it out of the ground. Now, this King's List was made for a particular purpose. And that purpose was to show that the current king was the one chosen by the heavens and the gods to rule everything. That's the idea. There's another really weird thing. I don't know how they could pretend this was correct. It begins after the kingship descended from heaven. The kingship was in Eridu. Now, so the idea is there's one king chosen by heaven. That was never the case. When this list was compiled, that was not the case. So they're pushing a political argument here. And one that is patently false. However, the document itself is very interesting. Now, it is, as you would expect, you could turn it down a little bit. I'm getting some feedback. Yeah, that's right.
You're too far forward.
Well, I know, but I want to shine my light to the light at the screen. I kind of am going to use them. Because I'm an old geezer, I'm used to using slides.
Overheads.
Overhead. You laugh. Yes, overhead. We didn't have any computers protecting things. That's right. So, it counts 8 kings. It starts out with 8 kings. The other thing is, the author of this list doesn't think anybody but a king is worth mentioning. So, it lists 8 kings, and then it has a very odd notation. It says, after the flood swept over, and the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Kish. It is recording Noah's flood. And it was dug out of the ground. Nobody made this up. Now, if go to the next one, I know you can't read that. Maybe you can. Oh no, it didn't end. Okay. Try the next slide. I don't know what in the world. That is hilarious. Okay. We're not going to have slides. The I copied it over from a document into a presentation, and it made me copy it piecemeal. And then, when I went back and looked at it, it did exactly that. It had oodles, everything became the last thing I copied in, even though I saved it. So I'll just pretend you can understand what I'm saying.
Here we go.
All right. Now, there are 8 kings. We know that their Adam, their first man, Adapa, is not in the list. Their flood hero, Zuasundra, is not in the list. If we look at the biblical account, there are 10 patriarchs. Noah is the 10th patriarch. So if we leave off Adam and Noah, there are 8 patriarchs. 8 patriarchs, 8 kings. Now, he starts out and he has a list of reigns. These guys lived a long time. Elulun reigned for 28,800 years. Alargar reigned for 36,000 years. Emenluana, 43,200 years. Mengala, 28,800 years. Tamuzi, 36,000 years. Ensipaziana, 28,800 years. Amendurana, 21,000 years, and Ubertutu, 18,600 years. And I notice immediately that Lamech lived less than the other patriarchs, except for Enoch, and he's an exception. Ubertutu reigned for less than the other kings. Now, the Sumerians were weird.
Yes. Probably an understatement.
It is an understatement. Semitics, the Semites, Hebrews, they go base 10. The Sumerians were hexadecimal. Their number system was base 60. Well, it's a very convenient number because you can divide it by a lot of things, and it's nice and large. And so if you're counting sheep or soldiers, it's pretty convenient, especially when you're writing on a clay tablet with a little tapered stick.
And we still use base 60 today.
Yes.
Can anybody guess?
Okay. What's base 60?
Got it.
Yeah, 9.
60
seconds. 60 minutes to an hour. We don't do partial. Now, they weren't quite that insane. So they had, and I had them on a nice slide for you. If you took the narrow end of the stylus and slid it into the clay, then you got a little shield. That was 1. That represented 1. And you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, you didn't want to go to 60, right? Because that's like. The next, so they had a symbol for 10. You take a little end and you stick it. That's 10. And then, well, then it's not too bad. You go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, well, now you get to 60. So 60 was you took the big end of the stylus and you slid it in, and then you get a big sheet, right? And it goes up to 36,000, 10 times 60 squared. That was, you took the big end and stick it in there and make a circle, and then you take the little end and stick it inside. So they had all this mixed notation.
A Sumerian.
Now,
Say from a translation standpoint, later on.
No, don't get to that.
and I have the Sumerian representations for all those reigns, see?
Makes sense now.
I'm glad you can see them. Now, one thing you'll notice, all right, it's 8 numbers, 8 reigns. 3, 28,800. And there were 36,000 appears twice. And the list had 8 numbers, so these are rounded numbers. These are not precise reigns. You know, good enough for government. So, we're dealing with a list that had rounded numbers. The Semites were base 10. The Sumerians were this wonky base 60 mixed vintage. Funky little Silas and Clay. So, the individual numbers are not the same, right? And that is, there's a reason that to be true. Because what are they writing on? Clay tablets. The practice was, I write my list on a clay tablet on one side, and then on the other side I write the total. So if we're counting up lengths of reigns, I put the total on the one side. The total is on the whole side by itself. Unless the tablet is completely destroyed, that'll survive. The other side, well, if you bump it or, drop the thing a little bit, you can lose all the data and it's gone forever. There's no hint of what was there. So I think that is a reasonable explanation of why the numbers are not the same. Now, if we take our patriarch's ages and, well, the Semites settled where? In Near East. And what did they use for writing? Probably clay tablets. Probably the same kind of system the Sumerians used, because that's the materials they had. However, they're base 10. If we take our patriarchs, the 8 patriarchs, not 10, the 8 patriarchs' names, reigns, lives, and we add them up, rounded to 2 digits, and this is 2 cuneiform digits. So we come up with 6660. And this is kind of why the bottom thing is 6660. From the same kind of thing that they would use for writing. Actually, go ahead and pass it around. If we take the Sumerian king reigns, we assume that the Hebrew is the original. So I have this Sumerian scribe. The Sumerian scribe is dealing with a damaged tablet. The Sumerian scribe knows the total because it's on the side by itself. And it's like that. It has circles, and then smaller circles, and then these little individual things. He's going to interpret that as 36,600 or something like that. Yes. No, 42,300. And so 42,300 would be what he interpreted that as. And then he goes to the other side and he sees, these things. There were pieces missing. He fills them in. Why does he fill them in? Because he's got this one copy of his tablet. And the king says, you're going to make me a list. Being a smart little scribe who really enjoys having his head attached, he does it. So have exactly the same number of people before the flood. We have a list of, well, in this, the Sumerians would assume kings and reigns, not patriarch and life. We have a total that would agree. Now, the Sumerian would think that the six little dots on the end, what is that? Because they wouldn't do it that way. They would take the 6 and make a bigger dot. But he would still come out with the same total. And that is what we have before the flood. And it mentions the flood. This is, you can say whatever you want, they believed it. Even if it was wrong. And they wrote it down faithfully. Now, the rest of it, there's a whole pile of kings. I won't bore you with all that. I will, especially since there's about 20 kings. I'll just start out reading them. It says, the kingship descended from heaven, and the kingship was in Kish. So we have Babum of Kish, 300 years. Quanum of Kish, 840 years. Calabum of Kish, 960 years. Calabim of Kish, 840 years. And it goes on. All of these, again, are rounded to the nearest 10. It's a rounded list. Now, down, we have Bali of Kish. I'm just picking up the one that might be more interesting. Then there's goes down to the Tassadum of Kish, 1,200 years, who conquered Elam. Interesting. Because we know Elam. Then there is then Kish was defeated, then kingship was taken to Yat. We have Meshki Ang Gasher of Yana, son of Utu, 324 years. And then we have Romans attacked my those too. There was Enmej Baraj C of Kish. If we go, and that was of Kish, if we go down to Erech, we have Muzid, the fisherman, 100 years. He captured Enmej Baraj C. Problem is, there's 3,000 years between Enmej Baraj C of Kish and Muzid. That tells us something is rotten in Sumeria. And the thing that is rotten in Sumeria is not all of these kings, they are forcing on this king's list the idea that there's one king over the whole place. Obviously not true. Because there were a number of kings, there were city seats at that time. There were a number of kings reigning in different places, and like Enmej Baraj C, actually he's the one who captured Elam, and then Toulouse captured him. So there's some imagination going on here when he's making this list. And the whole purpose of the list is to show that the king is official. Now, we come down, and we'll come to another guy we know. Gilgamesh. We get to Gilgamesh. His reign is the last long one, it's 126 years. After that, that's a precise number. After that, you have Ernungol, 30 years, Udu Kalama, 15 years, Labashun, 9 years. They're reasonable reigns. They're reigns that we would see in history, in modern day. So, and the other thing is, there it is, this list, as I said, it was a compilation from the first 8 patriarchs are rounded numbers. And rounded numbers, I think, that were converted incorrectly from base 10. They took them as base 60. And the other numbers, the whole list from after the flood to Gilgamesh are rounded numbers. So that, our scribe here was probably copying that list. And then once he got to Gilgamesh, he's writing down a different list. He made that list. Because they're actual correct reigns. And so, so we have a king's list that was assembled for a particular purpose. If we look at, say, the history of the church, in the 300s, man, my brain is really sad. Erasmus, not Erasmus. Made a church history. But in the 400s, when he looked back at the early church, they had a single bishop for each church. And so when they tried to compile a list of the bishops of Rome, it's a mess. There are 2 or 3 different versions. Same thing here. They have this list, and that's all the data they got. He copied it faithfully, but he copied it into his, numbering system. He couldn't even think like, the Summies. So, I will belabor this no more, let you go. But the thing is, this thing, the King's List, is not a fake. We have other documents that are probably not as ancient. And if you don't throw tomatoes at me, I may show you. That parallel the biblical example, and we say they're fake, and I can show you why I don't think they are. So, God, as I've said before, God has never left himself without a witness. We have had books from God and from his prophets, patriarchs, all along the way. And the original language, and I can give some more hints about why this is later. The original language, I believe, was Hebrew.
Yes, amen.
And that is why Moses could write what he wrote when he wrote it. He didn't make it up. God didn't make Genesis. He didn't give him all that stuff. Moses wrote down excerpts from books he had that came across on the earth. So anyway, let's close in prayer. Father, we thank you for the silly slides that just completely got worked up. We'll try again next time. Thank you for your love for us, and thank you for throwing things in the dirt like the Sumerian Kings List that really mess up the standard history world. Thank you that you care enough for us to do silly things like that. Let the thing sit there for 3,000 years, 4,000 years. Thank you for all that you're doing in the church, and thank you for each one here. And we trust that you use us and church and you bring us together as a body. And bring us back Sunday. Pray in Jesus' name. Stuff's hard to know for those slides.